Welcome back to our Roman Catholic Springs channel, where we explore the scriptures. We are still busy with Genesis chapter 1. We have concluded the act of creation. Everything that needs to be there is there. And now we step into the section of Genesis 1, known traditionally as the work of ornamentation. So, let us read together out of Genesis chapter 1. I read from verse 11. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth vegetation, every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seed in it." And so it happened. The earth brought forth every kind of plant that bears seed, and every kind of fruit tree on earth that bears fruit with its seeds in it. God saw how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed, the third day. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate day from night. Let them mark the fixed times, the days, and the years, and serve as luminaries in the dome of the sky, to shed light upon the earth." And so it happened. God made the two great lights, the greater one to govern the day, and the lesser one to govern the night. And he made the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to shed light upon the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw how good it was. Evening came, and morning followed, the fourth day. Verses 11 to 19 of Genesis chapter 1 are particularly fascinating. One thing we have to note is the order. First we have the vegetation upon the earth, and then we have the heavenly bodies in the dome, the rakia of the sky, which separates the waters that are even higher above from the waters below in the ocean. And it is quite clear then from the third and fourth day accounts that we are still busy with this moving between up and down. Remember, we've gone up and down, left and right, up and down, left and right. The last left and right was the creation of sea and land. And now we have a down, the vegetation, and an up, the stars, the heavenly bodies. And within this, there is a great deal to be contemplated. Firstly, if ever we want to try and harmonize the scriptural account of creation with the scientific account of the coming to being of the universe and all that is in it, we fail. And we fail spectacularly here on the third and the fourth days. But when we look at the fourth day very, very pertinently, we realize that something else is going on here. The account of creation is the account of coming to order, of relationships between things. It is not in that sense an origin story, and it's not even meant to be scientific. And the clues are all over the place, and I will discuss them at more length once we come to the end of this whole section, this whole narrative of the purpose of creation more than the how of creation. For it is on the third and fourth day that any sort of harmonizing with the scientific account of the coming to being of all things utterly fails. Scripture tells us the plants came first, and then the sun, the moon, and the stars. If you try, and as many have done in the past, to put an age to the day, to say, well, maybe one day of creation is 1,000,000,000 years, you will then have the plants growing without sun and moon and stars in the sky for 1,000,000,000 years, which, since the plants rely on sunlight, it is just not possible. You can't make a day-age comparison between the creation account and the scientific account. The scientific account tells us that after a moment of universal expansion, we have what is called the Big Bang. The first particles come into being, condensing out of the vast energy of the Big Bang, leading to the simplest atoms, which allows stars to form, and from the exploding of stars, other elements form. And over time, exploding stars gather a lot of dust. The dust coalesces and becomes new solar systems. And here, after about 13 to 14 billion years, here we are, coalesced from star stuff. But the stars come first. There is no way we can harmonize the plants coming first in the creation account in Genesis with the physical fact that stars had to exist for their billions of years before plants could exist, before the molecules were there, born from the heart of the first, second generation of stars in the universe. So a harmonization between science and Genesis 1 fails at this point. And that leads us then to contemplate, what is this account about? We have already had the hint when I made the comparison between the Tahum Wabahum and Tiamat, that there is an agenda behind this description. The agenda of diminishing any sense that there are gods other than God, the creator and source of all things, that God is not distant, he is involved in the world and in humanity in a particular way, which this account will further go on to describe. And that we have a sense of idol mockery, the mockery of the idols of the nations happening here in this account. And it is utterly clear when we come to the fourth day and the description of God's creating of the heavenly bodies. Firstly, God simply creates lights to tell the difference between day and night and puts them in the sky, in the bottom of the rekia, a decoration on the bottom of the rekia, very much in the same way that the plants are a decoration on the surface of the earth. So we have this decoration down here, and we have the decorations underneath the rekia. They are similar, and that's why they are together in this account, except the one lot, the plants, are down, and the other lot, the stars, are above. But they cover the surface of things, the surface of the earth, and the surface of this bowl, this rekia, which is envisaged as holding back the waters of the cosmic flood, so that we can have existence, so that living things can have existence. God simply creates lights. And it was so. God created, the scripture goes on, as a sort of narrative, as a further description, but God's words are only about lights. And it talks about the great light in the day and the little light at night. In the Hebrew, that is well translated. The Or Gadol and the Or Katon, the big light and the little light. there are no proper names for sun and moon used here. And that is a moment of insight for us. For particularly the name of the sun, Shemesh, has to do and is borrowed from the names that surrounding people gave the sun, but they also attributed divinity to the sun. The sun was a god. The moon was a goddess, although some cultures have them the other way around. And the stars are also signs of gods. We have our signs of the zodiac, associated with various divinities, with heroes, with mythical creatures, all of them pointing to a sense that those heavenly lights represented or were in some way or another sources, pinpoints of divine being. And so the sun is worshipped, the moon is worshipped, and the stars and their constellations are worshipped. Here in the Genesis account, it is all utterly prosaic. Those things up there are simply clockwork. They are nothing more than a timekeeper. There is no divinity. There is the avoidance of even giving them proper names. They are simply lights to differentiate the seasons. And in this way they are associated very closely with the plants. The seasons and the times tell the plants how to grow, when to rest, when to fall dormant. The clockwork has no other meaning than the timing of agriculture. No other meaning whatsoever. And this is an utterly and totally revolutionary thought in the world in which it developed. It is an utter and complete denial of the divinities as worshipped by non-Jewish people, of a sense that we are molded and formed by the stars. Genesis 1 tells us they are nothing more than clockwork. And paradoxically, the fact that this telling isn't scientific, plants first, lights second, lays the basis for the scientific investigation of nature, that we are dealing with things and not divinities, that we are dealing with a mechanism, not a person, when we look at the constellations, the things that pass over the sky, the sun, the moon, and the stars. This is a fundamental moment in the growth of human understanding of the world around us. Seeing the heavenly bodies as things and not as God. And not only as things in service of plants. Mere plants. So I'm afraid, here in this text in Genesis 1, you are simply told to regard the astrology section of any newspaper as so much nonsense. That the worship of sun and moon is like worshipping the blommetjies. Yes, one can appreciate them, they're pretty. They feed us. They are a mechanism pointing towards us and nothing else. And so there is so much revolutionary description happening in these verses, these first verses of ornamentation, that we can only wonder at the insight granted a person in some culture, maybe about 2,500 years ago, to see the world from a totally new angle, to see the world and nature in relation to the human creature instead of its master and overlord. Of course, that insight would bring us to the point where we are now, where things are a little bit out of balance towards the human interest. But Scripture addresses that over time as well. But let us see this work of ornamentation, these first 2 days of the work of ornamentation, as a tremendous breakthrough in human awareness of our relationship with the world and the world's relationship with us. The world is not the playground of gods. The world works like a mechanism. We can understand its mechanics. We find ourselves as part of that. But further contemplation will bring us to see our real place in all of this. Thank you so much for participating, and I look forward to our next time together.